Well, August is really tomato harvesting time, August and then September in Portland. At least that's been my experience for the last 8 years or so. I think that if you are really experienced in growing tomatoes, you grow a lot of tomatoes and you're really into it, you can kind of force them to come in early. And so you might have a good amount of tomatoes in July some years. And if you protect them well from the rains, you might keep them later. But for me, it's usually kind of August and September. And it's interesting to watch kind of my fellow gardeners around the community of Portland, because there's always this angst in July of, oh, you know, why are my tomatoes not turning red? Well, usually in my experience, they don't really come on in earnest until August. And so we're gonna be harvesting tomatoes here. We had 2 beds this year at PDX Garden Home. So this bed here, which we'll start with, and then that bed over there. Now I do feel for people that I think the weather's been, as I've mentioned earlier, the weather's been pretty erratic. And so I can imagine some of the bigger tomatoes that people try to grow may be struggling to ripen up still right now. But fortunately, what you'll see for us is I kind of cheat my way through that, because I never really liked tomatoes growing up. I didn't like eating them. And then only after an adult and growing tomatoes did I start actually enjoying tomatoes. And pretty much I enjoy by far and generally a variety of cherry tomatoes, or the small tomatoes, currant tomatoes. And so those obviously they ripe up, or maybe it's not obvious, but I'll tell you, they ripe up easier than your big beefsteak tomatoes, which is nice for me because I like the cherry tomatoes better anyway. And then on top of that, you also have less problems with blossom end rot and things like that, which usually is caused by, they'll say it's caused by a calcium deficiency, which I do put lime in the compost mix that we put down in the beds before we plant out. But I may still be having that problem because we do have some blossom end rot on some of the bigger saucing tomatoes. But I also think that I've been a little bit erratic with the watering, and so that has a lot to do with causing some of that blossom end rot. But my point about that is that actually, no matter how erratic I am or not with watering, I don't have that kind of problem with cherry tomatoes. So cherry tomatoes are easier, they ripen easier, they don't have the blossom end rot problems. I don't really get much pests with tomatoes, but my guess is they may get fewer pests if this was an issue for you in growing tomatoes. So you'll see that we do a lot of different kinds of cherry tomatoes and very few larger tomatoes. We do a couple larger ones, but certainly I've grown the big beefsteak ones just for the fun of it and to get that thrill of saying I grew a really big tomato. But I don't actually like eating the really big tomatoes anyway. So yeah, let's get to it and let you kind of see what we have and what we're harvesting here today. These are all sun golds. Now, some of them actually may be, let me see if I can find the, okay, so these are actually, this is actually a variety that's not sun gold, I'm sorry. It is a special variety that we get from territorial seed called the orange Paruche, P-A-R-U-C-H-E, I think. I think it's a variety, maybe, I don't know if it's related to sun gold or not, or if it was somehow derived from it, but it's even sweeter, I think, than sun gold, and perhaps a darker orange. And so we really like this one. And that's kind of one of the things that we specialize in growing, is specialty varieties of cherry tomatoes that you normally can't really get in the store, you know, and the seeds for these kind of specialty varieties are usually more expensive, and at first that might seem like a turnoff, but you know, even though it looks like you're paying 5 times as much for tomato seeds for fewer seeds in a packet, you're still getting a packet of seeds that is probably a lot more than you'll really be able to plant in most cases. So, and you get a great tomato that you can't easily find in a store. So that's the ideal for us. Okay, so moving down this way a little bit, what we have in these beds, the beds are surrounded by different kinds of marigolds, and then, you know, I have some that are French marigolds down here, and then I have some that are kind of the small, what they call lemon marigolds over here. And then in the center of the tomato plants, or in the center of the tomato beds, I've got pepper plants kind of spaced out as well. And over here in these tomatoes, what we're looking at, these, I was talking about things ripening up, and these haven't ripened up that much for us. These are called the Japanese trifle tomato. I don't know if they're truly from Japan or not. I get the seed again from I think I get the seed on these from Territorial Seed. And these tomatoes are kind of a plum tomato, and I like the way they taste, and I like to slice them, but I also like them. They also work well from a sauce perspective. They've got a nice deep coloring to them. That one's got a bug hole in it of some sort, so I'm going to toss it. There we go. The advantage of growing lots, you can get rid of what you don't want without too much guilt there. It's tough to cut something off and have the fruit on it like that, and you know, if I really wanted to save it, I could cut around it and try to save the fruit and let it grow out. But this was a sucker that was on the plant, and yeah, I'm pretty disciplined about keeping to my single stem in most cases, and trying to, even if there's fruit on some of the other stems, because I got to it late, I go ahead and take it off, just so that I'm not letting it get in the way of other things we have growing here. Okay, so this, I'm not even sure what variety this is. It is a kind of a this is the Red Siberian, which is designed to fruit earlier and ripen with not as much heat. So I guess that makes sense that I would have some ripening up here in this weather that we've otherwise had some trouble getting things to ripen up. Yep. It looks like I had several of those. These, I don't know if you can see them from that far, but these are red currant tomato. I love those. They're just like little pieces of candy, actually. So this is a variety here and here. These are called Sweethearts. And I really like these. They are a great tomato in terms of how they're shaped. And yeah, they're my favorite kind of red grape tomato. So I've been getting these for a few years now. Well, aside from cherry tomatoes, the other kind of tomatoes that I enjoy growing are tomatoes for saucing, because that's pretty much the two things we'll do. We'll either make sauce or we'll eat fresh the cherry tomatoes. Like I've said before, I don't really like eating fresh beefsteak tomatoes all that much. And so in terms of a saucing tomato, these are a classic, which is the San Marzano. So we use these. I showed you the Japanese trifle tomato, which we also use for saucing as well. But these San Marzanos are kind of your classic, and you can get the seeds from a lot of different vendors these days. So and they've got San Marzano and San Marzano 2. I don't really know the difference. I just, anything packet that says San Marzano on it, I typically would use and give it a shot in terms of growing. So these 4 plants are here, but you can start to see here where I do have what I was mentioning earlier, the blossom end rot. And I think it's because of the weird weather and my erratic watering that has led to this. It's a calcium deficiency, which could be the cause originally by, I'm just taking those off now so I can just throw them away. Could be caused by having not enough calcium in the soil to begin with, but it's often not just that. It could be there is sufficient calcium, but the plant can't take it up properly because I'm not watering it properly. So that could be the issue here. And you know, like I said, it's an issue that happens with these bigger tomatoes that I don't have to worry about with the cherry tomatoes. And later in the season, I might go ahead and keep these and just chop off the rod end because you're using them for sauce anyway, right? So over here, what I have is a tomato. Let me double check this is what I think it is. Yes, these are a tomato called the tomato berry. And they've got a good flavor, but I actually grow them, and they're another one of those where the seed, I think they come from territorial seed, and the seed packets are more expensive than you might think. But again, you know, expensive compared to other like just plain tomato seeds, but not expensive compared to buying tomatoes in the store or plenty of other things you could do. So yeah, take that for what it is. But this is another one where you don't see it in the store. You don't see like little pint boxes of these that are called the tomato berry. And what I like about them is more the look. I like the flavor too. The flavor's good, but the look is cool. So it gets this glossy, this nice glossy red, look to it, and it's shaped. You can see it there, but it's shaped like a berry. It's got the little dimple at the bottom and at the top, and it's shaped like a berry, and that's why they call it tomato berry. And so this is one of those I grow for the taste and for the fun of the presentation. When you get a full pint of these, it just looks quite awesome. These looks like a pint of berries that are actually red cherry tomatoes. Just leaving a bunch on there to let them get even more red because I know they can. It's another awesome looking one there. If I hold it by the stem, perhaps you can see it better. Okay. The chocolate cherry tomato. I like the concept of it. The chocolate look to the cherry tomato. So, and they're quite prolific, so they do well. And so it's like, well, it's an easy tomato to grow. I'll go ahead and grow it in the garden, but it's not, I don't actually like the taste of it better than others or anything. And so I think I just have one or two of those plants around here that we're growing. Another one that you'll see here which looks almost like a cherry tomato, but isn't, is, and I'll probably say this wrong, it's the Principe Borges. It's an Italian saucing tomato. In pictures I've seen that they get a little bit bigger than this, but this is about the size a lot of mine get. So they're a little bit bigger than your average cherry tomato, and these are intended for saucing or maybe slicing in half and then drying. I've done that, and they work out really well for that. And I like growing those for processing purposes. Over here I have one that's really more of an early cherry tomato. So it is the Gold Nugget. And these are great because they will come on when the weather's a little colder. They're usually the first tomato or first cherry tomato that I get ripening up. They're not as sweet as perhaps a Sun Gold, at least not to me. I haven't done an official Brix test or anything. And certainly not as sweet as the one I showed you earlier. The Orange Peruche is way sweeter, to me anyway, again. But if you're having troubles with tomatoes coming on because of colder weather, or you're just aching to get tomatoes as early as possible, I think the Gold Nugget, sometimes I laugh and call it the Cold Nugget because it comes on earlier and seems to do okay when it's a little colder out. That tomato's a nice, dependable one. Get all these. All right. Okay, and then finally, what I have over here are currant tomatoes. I have some more red currant tomatoes here, but the white currant tomatoes, these are definitely like little candies. I love these. I find these hard to save. It's hard to save them because usually when I pull them off the branch, I usually damage it a little bit where the stem connects to the tomato. And if I really want to save it, what I'll do is take my clippers and like clip a branch off like that, just like they're grapes kind of, and that's to me, I find that an easier way to kind of save them to share with other people. But otherwise, this is kind of a garden eating tomato. Like just coming out here and grabbing it out of the garden and eating it straight from here is the best way to ensure that I'm gonna get to enjoy it and not have it go bad on me and not have a problem. And it is quite delicious. So these are white currant tomatoes. Even though I said they don't necessarily say, well, I'm going to go ahead and make an attempt, I always do. But I'll inevitably find out later that I cracked it somehow and that they're going bad on me before I get to eat them.